Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. The Milwaukee Public Schools budget has been the topic of discussion for quite some time. The district felt so cash-strapped that it recently went to voters to ask for and received a $250,000 tax increase. It's still projecting budget cuts that include job losses and in several other areas. Yet, the district could lose $16 million next month. Joining us today is Ben Young, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, what's going on now with the Milwaukee Public Schools?
Well, that's the question. What is going on and who is doing what? You're always a bad radio guest or a podcast guest when you correct the host, but you said $250,000 tax increase. This is $250 million tax increase.
I was giving him a break.
Yeah, Milwaukee Public Schools. The sheer. I'm trying to think of the podcast friendly word. The stones on this district around this budget are just jaw dropping, and then you compare it. You juxtapose that. You place it side by side with this snapshot that it doesn't appear that the district is doing the behind the scenes required work in order to make sure it's in compliance. This is a story that really started to come together last week, Friday of last week, when Wisconsin's Department of Public Instruction, which again is a very Democrat-heavy, liberal-heavy state bureaucracy that is not known for punishing public schools and certainly not known for punishing and or embarrassing Milwaukee public schools. DPI sent MPS. There are going to be lots of letters in this explanation. But the state sent Milwaukee schools a letter saying, you have not turned in your audit and your official paperwork or your certified budget for the past 2 years. These are reports that were due in September and December of last year. They're now 8 months old. If you don't get them to us by July, we're going to have to suspend at least $15 million. And when I say at least, that was what the general state aid payment was for June of 2023. So certainly their June 2024 payment would be put on hold, but there's also the potential for millions of dollars in special ed money. And we'll get to this quirk in a bit. It's not just Milwaukee Public Schools that could be shorted. When you take a look at how Wisconsin allocates school dollars, it's one big fund, and then you break that out on a per pupil basis. And if Milwaukee doesn't submit its numbers, then that formula is thrown all helter-skelter, and schools across the state could be punished as well. But this is a snapshot. And I think that's the perfect term for this, that if you see it in real time, you're watching the movie. But this is a snapshot. You get this little peek here and this little peek there and this little peek there. And it does raise questions as exactly what you said. What's going on? Because it was just a week or two ago that the federal government, along with the state's Department of Health and Human Services, suspended Head Start funding for Milwaukee Public Schools. That decision came after allegations of neglect and abuse, teachers grabbing and pulling and pushing kids as young as 3, as well as some Head Start drivers in Milwaukee just dropping 3-year-olds off at the wrong school and waving goodbye. But that suspension of the Head Start money came after, again, the federal government and the state government asked for reports, corrective actions. Show us the plan on paper that you have to better train your people, to better track these complaints. And MPS never bothered to turn that report in. So here we are, 1 month, 2 weeks, 2 different areas of government threatening to withhold money from Milwaukee Public Schools because they're not even bothering, they're not completing. There are no answers as to why these reports aren't done. But yeah, again, one thing may be an aberration, but 2, 3, the snapshots start to put together and give you a sense that something's not getting done at Milwaukee Public Schools' central office.
I know I'm going to bring up things that you're not going to have any real idea about, but I understand the Head Start thing. There were allegations, very serious allegations. They didn't respond. The federal and state government stepped in and said, no, until we get this ironed out. We're going to stop this. Okay. These are things you do every year. This is your budget. This is your audit. How is this 10 months late? And if you're in such dire straits that you need $250 million from taxpayers, why is your paperwork not in order?
These are the questions that DPI is asking. These are the questions that Milwaukee's school board is going to have to answer. These are the questions that just sort of dovetail and dovetail and dovetail and dovetail. And again, this is not just, everybody could say, all right, you know what, mistakes are made.
Sure.
There's one thing, but this is becoming a pattern. And to take this to another, well, here's the other piece of the puzzle. The Milwaukee School Board is going to vote next week, maybe the week after that, on a brand new $1.5 billion annual budget.
You cannot vote on a budget if you don't have this other stuff done. You just can't do it.
No, well, they have a spending plan, but they have not filed their certified, the standard accounting practices, actual numbers with DPI. They've got a rough idea. It's all right, well, we're going to spend this and we're going to do this and it's going to include this raise. But this budget, this new budget that's before the city's school board, includes nearly 300 position cuts. About half of those would be teachers. Less than 30 of that 300 would come with district administrators. And this is the question that education reformers have been asking for years. Why is Milwaukee Public Schools, why is MPS so top heavy? Why do they have so many administrators? And then you add that to this, well, okay, they've got lots of administrators, but obviously no one is doing this kind of work. And it presents, again, to use the word snapshot, it presents a look, a view of a school district where there are a lot of people getting paid to do something, but it doesn't appear that a lot of people are actually doing anything. And the school board put out a statement that said, yes, we're aware of this. We're working to find a resolution. We're working very hard to bring this to conclusion. One of the sort of, well, we got to say something, so we might as well say this kind of statements. But there's been no indication that anyone's going to be held accountable for this, that they figured out who dropped the ball here. Was this the superintendent's staff? Because eventually, look, even if it is a day-to-day MPS employee, some nameless, faceless bureaucrat who's in the Office of Reports, and they just didn't do their job. Well, eventually they have a boss and they have a supervisor, and that supervisor has to report to somebody at the central office, and that person eventually has to report to the superintendent. And these are reports that were due 8 months ago. DPI is not a draconian institution. This is not the first warning that MPS got about this. There's no way that it is. And so again, it begs the question, what have you been doing? Who has not been doing what for all this time? And what are the other things that Milwaukee Public Schools just aren't doing? What other required reports? What other basic safety reports are they ignoring? Just what else is not getting done at school district headquarters? And we're just at the beginning of those questions.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions here. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Some people would call him a loser. He ran for state office. He was beaten. He started a business. He failed. He ran for Congress. He lost. He was nominated for vice president. He lost again. But he knew only those who never tried are the real losers. And Abraham Lincoln was no loser. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life. Add value